Hey, finally.
You see it?
Yeah, I can see you guys.
Hey, it's all right, man. First
Yeah.
time I did a live stream concert, it took forever to figure it out.
Well,
Oh, the light's not
it's weird
on.
because
Give me a
like
sec.
it only works for mobile, but not desktop. So I was trying to do it on
Okay.
desktop just because I don't want to use my phone. It's already giving me problems.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So just give
Yeah,
me
these things
one.
happen.
I'm like balancing it on a couple cables right now.
Seems
No.
the picture's really dark. Oh, do we need to even like?
I don't even know what's going on here. You can kind of see us. I don't know what else we can do to make it so you can see us. That light's on.
Ah, it's okay as long as we can
Uh,
hear you.
We're so
oh,
dark and
he
morbid.
can't see our image at all.
Oh, you can't see your image?
No, no, no. I was just telling Dan
Can
you
you?
can't see our image at all.
I can.
Okay.
Oh, you can.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
it's all that
good.
matters. I don't need to see
All
my.
right.
I don't need to see my face. I know how pretty I am.
Well, I'll
So,
agree.
let me see if I can turn this. I can't turn this sideways. Man, don't like this phone. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for a couple more people to come in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll wait till we get like somewhat of a critical mass. So man, thanks for getting this group together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're like this is very exciting for us.
yeah, no problem.
The
It's
whole songwriting group and everything. It's
honestly
really cool.
my pleasure, and it's good to have you guys here because not only, sorry, I'm really like I'm literally balancing my phone on the charger cable.
Oh, I
So if
hate
it
that.
falls,
Oh,
I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's all good, man.
well,
Yeah,
ours might glitch out now and then. We might like sort of like cut out.
Yeah,
yeah.
my phone's a piece of crap.
No, it got something in
You
it.
might
I
just
don't
have to
know.
re-invite us. So yeah.
Oh
Hopefully
yeah,
that
no,
won't
no,
happen.
not a problem. Okay, so yeah, in regards to the group, yeah, like I just wanted to have a better space for this kind of stuff because I do a lot of posting in other groups and I find it's like filled with just like negativity and BS comments and a lot of crap like that. So I felt like working with a lot of clients, metal clients, and all that stuff. Like I think more people can learn more about this stuff and also learn to collaborate. I often get a lot of people just messaging me, asking if I know a drummer or whatever.
Yeah.
So just having everybody in one space kind of makes things easier for not only me but everybody else who might not have the resources. So
No
yeah,
kidding. Yeah.
I'm
A
glad.
Absolutely.
lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm glad a lot of people are like digging it because I really didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Oh man, well in the metal community, it's like I need a drummer, but not the same drummer I have. I need someone with this sound, or I need someone else who can add guitar, and
Yeah,
it's nice,
yeah,
just nice to see there's a good variety of people out there. Because yeah, we do a million projects, and we're gonna need other people too.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. No, it's great. And the thing is, like a lot of those communities where you can find people are more production focused or
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
like promotional. So it's like I just wanted a place where you can only get like collaborators, songwriters, that sort of thing. Because otherwise, it usually gets lost in everything else, or you get like stupid
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. It's mostly the stupid comments and people just everyone's trying to be a keyboard warrior.
Yes, yes, for
Yeah.
sure. So let me see if I can just edit a couple things here. I think there's a few more people that'll join us for sure.
Cool.
Yep.
How are you guys doing?
Good. Sunday went for a nice walk,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
gonna be doing some recording later on today.
Oh, nice.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always
Yeah.
fun.
So, fair warning, we've got a 6-year-old.
Yep.
He's currently occupied with his electronic devices right now, but he may or may not come and interrupt us. So we told him not to, but
He's six.
he's with us.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Totally
in 1 year with
understandable.
the other for a lot
Yeah.
of things.
All right. I was gonna ask you something. Oh yeah, do you prefer Randolph or Dan? Because I've seen you have your
Oh,
page.
Dan. The reason why I have Randolph and I've been thinking about changing my account back to my real name
Oh,
is
okay.
that when you're looking for jobs in academia, they look at your Facebook and your all your social media, and if you say anything risky at all, you don't get the job.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna change my name for Facebook.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden that I'm like back into the metal scene, everyone's my friend on my Randolph Carter account is like, well,
Yeah, everyone thinks that that's like his real
yeah,
name.
now everyone thinks I'm Randolph.
Oh,
So
I
okay.
used to have like a fake name. My account is my middle name, but my first name is Ruth.
Okay. Yeah, I figured because
But yeah,
I saw.
we had
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying I
it's yeah,
saw your name, school name, and I was like, oh, it's different.
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
We're definitely the
Academics are real
Ruth and
assholes and you
Dan.
gotta watch out for them. So
Yeah,
that's all.
I'm just
There's a
changing.
lot of proof.
I'm putting in parentheses your real names there,
Oh, that's good.
Okay,
so
awesome.
people won't be confused when I'm addressing you differently. All right.
That's fine. Now, I assume we have to watch our language a bit because this is on YouTube.
No, this is well, it will get uploaded to
I
YouTube.
yeah, I'm planning on just uploading it to YouTube as well, but I don't care personally. Like
Okay,
I'm not like
okay. Well, I
planning on
just 'cause-
I'm not planning on making money or monetizing this, so like just say it as it is.
okay, all right. Just before we,
Yeah.
get too comfortable, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. All right, so I think that's a good amount of time for people
Yeah.
to roll in. So
I think so.
yeah,
6.
I just wanted to start for everybody who would tune in either later or tuning in now. Just a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and like your background in music.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Who's gonna
Sounds
start?
good. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Do you want me to go first?
Sure, you go first.
Okay. So I'm Ruth Geshtel. I play guitar in 2 bands right now. One is 30 Immolated 16 Return, which is Dan's baby. The other one is Metal Adian, which is Dan's brother's brainchild. I've gone to post-secondary education for music for 18 years, I guess. Completed my doctorate a year and a bit ago
Cool.
in music composition and theory. I've played classical guitar since I was 14. I've been playing guitar since I was 14, really. And
we're old, so that's a long time.
Yeah, I'm 41. He's 43. So
Okay.
yeah, it's been a while. What else?
Our studio.
Well, yeah, we started our own teaching studio here, out of our house, where we teach various instruments. We teach guitar, piano, drums, voice, and music theory as well.
Nice.
And pretty much music is
Survives.
yeah, it's pretty much in everything that we do.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Cool. Yeah, short and sweet. I'm Dan Brophy. Almost the same background as Ruth. I've been listening to metal since I was like 7 years old. I was in some old thrash bands in the area. One was called Force of Habit. No one here is probably old enough to know that one. Another one is called Pathist.
Right.
So yeah, I've been in bands for a long time. I did the whole thing. We both went to Mohawk College for guitar.
Yeah.
Then we both did our undergrad in Waterloo. We both did masters. I did U of T. She did U of Vic. Then we both did our PhDs in music and composition at the U of A. And that's when I wrote my thesis work, 30 Immolated 16 Return, which is the name of our band and actually the piece of music that we play. If anyone's interested in actually reading my thesis later, I can post it. And it actually gives like a full analysis of like the piece if you guys want to see like a real theoretical article on it. Other than that, yeah, I help run our music studio, the Randuth Music Studio. And yeah, I'm obsessed with death metal and metal of all sorts. And I just love it. And I love the idea of composing. Ruth and I, we've both composed chamber works, which means like modern classical music for like several instruments.
Right.
We've had them played all over the Toronto area and stuff like that. We're on a CD for it and stuff like that. So we've had quite a bit of compositional experience, a lot of theory experience and stuff like that. And we're just really stoked to be doing this today. This is a lot of fun for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool. And for that analysis, definitely post it because, I mean, a lot of us probably won't understand it because we're not up to par with music theory. But it'd be cool to definitely have a look into it and just kind of get a grasp of how you approach things, right? So
The literature background is very interesting.
The literature
accessible
background
to
is
anybody,
cool,
really.
but the actual analysis is so dry,
Yeah.
so boring.
Yeah. I mean,
It's the hardest part to write as your thesis,
It's the
that's for
hardest part to
sure.
read too.
Oh,
No one wants to read it.
no.
It's brutal.
whatever. You know,
It's fun
it's
reading it,
cool.
but
Like
then you have to write about it.
yeah, I'm interested in it anyway, so I would definitely like to check that out.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, great. No, that's really awesome. And I mean, before we really get into anything, I'll just say it full disclaimer. I only know very basic music theory. I've never been too big into it. I'm pretty much self-taught myself. So you guys definitely know way more than me, and I'll be asking just as many questions. So for anybody actually watching this and saying, you know, I have no idea what they're talking about, hopefully I can boil it down a little bit. You know.
Yeah, no, we're gonna try and like bring it back quite a bit. Yeah.
It shouldn't be. Yeah, we'll try not to be too technical. I mean, we are talking about metal, and we do work with other metalheads, so we are used to just trying to talk as normal about it as we can. But every once in a while, some silly big academic words come up. We'll try not to use those.
Yeah.
Pretty useless anyway. So
rein us back in if that happens too much.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, that kind of brings us to the first little bit of this discussion I wanted to talk about. And it's actually a question from one of our moderators, Derek Clayton. And he was asking about the advantages and disadvantages with music theory and applying it. Like, you know, the common thing that a lot of people hear about is if you well, it's sort of a myth because it's not entirely true. But if you know music theory, some people feel like it can actually be a disadvantage just because it boxes you in. Obviously, that that's for the person to really decide. But what do you guys think about knowing music theory, knowing all that, and like the advantages and disadvantages for your own writing, or even students of yours?
Okay.
Well, the disadvantages to me is that, again, it all depends on who you are, what type of person you are. I don't think that music theory in itself can ever hinder anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on how far you decide to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the biggest hindrance with it. Some people can get like really short-sighted because they have everything has to fit within the music theory, but I personally feel there are a lot more advantages to having some musical theory background, in that it helps you structure your materials quite a bit, and it gives you tools to be more creative, make your music more interesting, and create like coherence and structure in your pieces as well, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even talking about chord progressions necessarily, because that is all up to the composers. Really, you write whatever chords you want, whatever sounds good to you in order. But there are other tools that are included in music theory that are like huge and extremely important, I think, in giving you a broader idea of how to structure a piece more interestingly, really.
Yeah, and what I'd say is it's when it comes to music theory, it depends on the type of music theory that you're going to be looking at. For example, if you're looking at nothing but music from Mozart's time, unless you're playing in a symphonic metal band, and even then, that's not going to have much relevance to what you're doing. Because Mozart's music it's nothing much like metal. Whereas if you're to look at either Baroque music like Bach or very modern, strange avant-garde music, that stuff is a lot more relevant when it comes to metal and how metal is written. And so in that case, you really kind of need, if you're going to learn theory in order to help you learn how to write music, you're better off getting it kind of customized to what you want to do. So it's like, I would say, like, I've had a few students who have come to me for theory lessons to help them compose, and we skipped the how to write classical music. We went straight into what type of music are you writing? Okay, let's figure out a plan for it. Here's some pieces and here's some composers that are relevant to what you're doing, and type of thing like that. So I don't think going to take Royal Conservatory exams for theory
or going to school.
It's going to help you. Actually, it's going to make it worse for you writing music, because you're going to try to write music like someone from the 18th century. And that sounds terrible for anything that we're doing nowadays. Whereas if you were to look like at specific things about like 17th century music, or very specific things about Beethoven's music, and apply it, But yeah, it has to be pretty well customized. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in this fog of, oh, every bar needs to be 4 measures long. Oh, every phrase needs to be like this. And then you sound like everyone else, but an uncreative version of everyone else.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, it's a lot harder to put your own identity into something that's so boxed in. Like the common practice period, which is from I don't know. You guys know who Johann Sebastian Bach was, the composer who was the Baroque composer who was he wrote a lot of
Cut and
keyboard
fuse,
work.
like,
Yeah.
that guy.
So,
His music is very metal, and the way that he composes would be very similar to the way that progressive or very technical metal is written.
yeah.
And that would be a good thing to listen to for that. Or
Yeah.
like Beethoven is an awesome guy to listen to for metal, because when you listen to his music, it's pretty metal sounding. It's pretty heavy sounding.
Well, as far as the harmony and stuff goes, and all that, it's very interesting, and a lot of it has been used even in metal music quite a bit.
But to kind of
the same harmonic progressions, harmonic structures, and that.
Yeah. But to kind of stop my rambling, I think you have to just
yeah.
You have to be studying. You have to make sure that you're focused on what the end result is. When I went to school for 17 years for music, my focus the whole time was metal. And it annoyed the crap out of all my teachers, and people made fun of me for it. But the whole focus was, how am I going to write the world's greatest metal piece in my own eyes? And I'm going to use all this theory and all this knowledge to do it. And so I was always focused on it. So it didn't ruin me creatively. But I've known other people who've gone to school for music, and they came out quitting music.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't stand it.
Yeah, to them that's all there was, and they couldn't see beyond.
Yeah, they couldn't see beyond, and they got involved with shitty teachers.
Yeah.
Who weren't supportive of what they wanted to do.
That's a lot of it too. So it really all depends. I think a lot of it depends on who you are. What you're.
Yeah, but a focus on what you really want and to not get kind of lost on the way.
Yeah.
For sure. I've always told people it's just like any language, it's like once you know some of the language, it'll be easier to translate your ideas and thoughts, but it's never been a necessary thing, to create music. It just helps, right? It's tools to have in your arsenal.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you need to know music theory to be able to write music. No, you don't.
And speaking of which, I have a little we have a list of tools here that might be helpful for the rest of the conversation.
Or we can like type them and send them to you if you want. That might be easier. I don't know. Depends.
But the tools are like, and they call these, and so music theory, they call these musical materials. Ruth said that earlier. So there's structure. So how the form of your piece and how the piece is going to be laid out in formal composition for like classical music or avant-garde jazz, we formulate the entire structure of the piece before, and like the idea, the basic story behind it before we even start writing anything.
Yeah.
And this gives you a goal to orientate yourself towards. The second thing that's usually done is you find your melodic or your pitch material. So your notes. Right? And this doesn't have to come from a scale, by the way. What I do is I come up with my melody first, and then I go back and I figure out what notes I used afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be anything formal. You just my hint for that stuff is like, go be creative and then go back and analyze what you did afterwards.
Yeah, try some notes on your guitar, your piano, whatever. Your melodic instrument is.
Yeah. Another piece of material is your rhythm or duration, how long all your notes are. Right? Like sometimes you want to say like, I want like my rhythmic structure to be a dotted eighth note, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but I want a couple 1, 2s in there. And so you can find different ways of organizing those. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, whatever. And so you're working with these different materials that you can organize any way that you want. Harmony, harmony is chords and stuff like that, but actually it's in metal, harmony is a very strange thing because we use fifth chords all the time, or if you're in drop tuning, fifth chords.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not harmony. You're actually just thickening up the melodic note. That's not what we consider harmony. Harmony is your home note. It's the note that sounds like you're arriving at home and how you get away from that. And this is how you create excitement, suspension, things like that. So these are all things that you can control ahead of time. You can plan for them without really writing the music, and you can still kind of like write the music intuitively.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are like the basic musical materials that composers and everyone works with, whether they know it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I when I write music, I do the exact same thing pretty much where I'll, like you said, I'll develop an idea. It might not be a melody, but it might be like a riff or something. Then I'll go back,
Yeah, whatever.
figure out what notes I'm actually using, and then for me, because I'm primarily a guitar player, and the way I think, I do everything sort of like the Nashville charts, where I'll just number the progression, and then I'll kind of build from there, and start thinking about drums and rhythm and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone has their own way of doing it. I interviewed Luc Lemay from Gorguts a few years ago for a paper in my PhD. He uses graph paper. He writes a riff, writes it down, and then he uses graph paper to plan the whole piece out
Wow.
first. And that's, and his music is brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. And he's classically trained, but he doesn't really use his classical training to write music. He's intuitive. But he found his own way to like formulate how he likes to do it.
I was color coding for a while too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of people doing color coding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's a whole organizational habit, but it's like, to me, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, especially as a visual learner, having any cues like that, color coding or just lettering and all that stuff, it really helps develop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Yeah, I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just I thought you were done there. You can continue if you'd like.
That's the problem with me is I'm never really done. I just keep talking.
Gotta cut him off.
Yeah, you just gotta cut me off.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like it's organization of materials is like no matter how you do it, it's good to have your materials laid out in front of yourself and then just start improvising after that, or just start working with it, manipulating things like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is manipulation of tools. And when you go to school for theory and composition, there's several tools that have survived since the Renaissance era, like the 15th century and on. And these are how to manipulate like your motifs and stuff like that. And they're transposition, so taking your melodic, your fragment, and you move it up or you move it down. Certainly. Fragmentation, taking your melody and chopping it up into useful little parts that you can disperse around your piece of music. Inversion, you take your melody, turn it upside down. Retrograde, backwards. Mirror, literally mirroring the notes of your melody. These are different
halfway
ways.
Through, yeah.
Yeah. So these are different ways of like expanding your material one way or the other. Augmentation, you take all your rhythmic notes and you make them twice as long. Diminution, take all your long rhythmic notes, make them half as short. Exactly. I saw Matt said fragmentation. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the last one is quite a bit more complicated, is counterpoint. And counterpoint is kind of like the coup de grace of all like composition, and it's a very difficult thing to achieve. A lot of bands do it without knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah.
But it's an awesome way to create like super technical music. But anyways, that's how you those are like the classic ways of manipulating your materials.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, because you just mentioned counterpoint, I know Derek had also asked, what is counterpoint? Like for anybody, just talk to us like we're 5-year-olds essentially.
Okay. So if you really want, counterpoint is the study of, so music is structured, pitch are structured either vertically with chords, if you think of a staff, and also horizontally. Counterpoint is the study of pitch organization horizontally.
Okay.
But that was what it was. Like Bach is the guy who was known to be the king of that, because he wrote like so many like books and things on counterpoint. But nowadays, if you think of counterpoint, it's essentially how do two parts work with each other, and how to make them independent, especially. So if you've got, say, one melodic line that's going and you want to write a second one, you're not going to have it do the exact same thing as the first one. You can have it do move in different ways, and rhythmically also you can create counterpoint with not having like notes happen on the same part.
Oh.
Basically, like just sort of try and make it like really simplistic.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So another way to think of it in like a more of a visual sense is counterpoint is a tapestry or a weave. Is how it's actually counterpoint is originally like a weaving thing. It's not from a long time ago. This before it was ever used for music, and it's when two different colors or two different are combined together and they weave around each other to create a single texture.
Like you think of a braid. Like if
Yeah.
you can see the shape of a braid in a melody, that would be a type of counterpoint.
Exactly. So two things that move away from each other, back together, away, back, and like move around each other, that would be counterpoint. I have an actual definition here. This is
Oh God.
this is the book that everyone has to read when they're learning this crap. The study of counterpoint is above all a study of voice leading. When you have a melodic line on an instrument, it's considered a voice, like a vocal voice, because almost all.
Well, originally it was all voice music that existed. Like think back in like the literally like in the years like 1100s and before Gregorian chant, they only did it by voice.
So as a sound, you do like sound production and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I do music production.
So you know, for orchestration, metal is extra hard because everybody is in that mid-low range, right? Yeah. So it's really hard to get a clear sound because everyone's fighting to get attention up there.
Yeah, to bring everybody out, right?
Whereas like if you were to write a song and you want everyone to be heard, you would orchestrate soprano, alto, tenor, bass, right? And that's easiest for everyone to hear, but that's not really the style of most metal, so too bad.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, so it's the study of voice leading. In other words, where are all the voices going?
Yeah, how are they moving with each other, not with each other?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it's the study of voice leading and how they complement and contradict each other at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like bringing it to that metal context. And based on your definition, like you said, like a lot of people probably do it unintentionally, especially when it comes to guitars, like having two guitars kind of play off of each other or play different things. You know, like solos even. Like I'm sure there's a lot of counterpoint there. And especially because, like you said, Bach being the king of it, a lot of like I can't even remember the names now, but a lot of lead guitar metal players, especially from the '80s, like they based a lot of their sound off of that Bach sound, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the Baroque, neo-Baroque, all that. Yeah.
Probably the easiest way to hear counterpoint in metal music. Actually, Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi's solos when he would do two solos at the same time.
Right.
They're both. It's two voices doing two different things, but they're in the same key. They're within the same scale and changing chords at the same time.
Yeah.
So they're still in harmony with one another, but they're moving differently from one another. So that's counterpoint.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it very digestible for anybody who got lost.
Exactly. That's easy. Black Sabbath. Tony Iommi is awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully that answered Derek's question. He should be viewing this, so I guess if he needs.
And yes, Pearl Jam has lots of counterpoint.
Yeah, they definitely do. Yeah, it's true. Matt and
what's his name?
No, sorry, like Stone and Mike. Yeah, my bad.
Where they're both complement. They're both playing two different guitar parts that together create like a really cool texture.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pearl Jam has great orchestration.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of segues into one of the main topics I wanted to talk about, because I did that poll in the group and just kind of went through all the top votes, and a lot of people had talked about melodies. Now, most of those people are probably talking in the sense of a singer putting something on top of a track, but obviously melody can also be contained in a guitar riff or anything.
And the bass too.
Yeah. So
actually, sometimes the bass is very melodic too.
When we let them.
Yeah. When they're allowed to touch their instruments.
You get the worst, like sacking. It's brutal.
So I know Matt.
Yeah. So melody.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I saw one of the questions.
Yeah, Matt had a specific question to that, but before we get to that, I just wanted to cover some basics for melody. Like, how do you approach writing a melody? How do you make a good melody? Because a lot of people are like they feel like their melodies are too basic or maybe ripping off somebody else. Like, what are some tools to actually develop more interesting melodies, more usable melodies for metal music?
Well, what I usually do is, first of all, when I'm writing melodies, I get off the guitar. Because what can happen is I've been playing guitar for a really long time and I've been obsessed with it for a long time, which means that when I get on it to write music, I'll tend to try and write the same music over and over and over. And it's something that you learn when you do free improvisation as well. People who try and do free improvisation on the instrument that they're used to are usually pretty bad at it, because you keep doing idioms, things that all other guitar players do, and that's lame because it's unoriginal. So I get on the piano, I get super high, and
It does help.
yeah, and I sit there and I sing along with it, and I play the piano for like, it will take me like 3 hours to come up with a 2-measure melody.
Yeah.
And be happy with it, and I write it down, and it's painful and it's slow. But yeah, usually what I do is sit down at the piano, get super high, put my foot on the sustain pedal, and jam out a melody for 3 hours with no theory in my mind whatsoever. The theory always comes after the creative process, when I figure out how to disperse my materials. But the original materials, I don't like doing that theoretically. I like doing it off the top of my head. Yeah. Or I'll get on to, I'll use something else to write the melody, or I'll sing the melody out to myself. Or if it's something like, if it's vocals, lyrics control the melody for me. The lyrics should just kind of make it pop out for you.
Yeah, actually, when you're writing a song, hence with lyrics, a lot of times you should always start with your text, whatever it is. Feel what for the rhythm, for the melody, all of it. See what works. Also, based on what the text is, read it. Where do you breathe? Where do you have to stop to take a breath, for example? That is probably an indication that whatever melody you are going to write should reach some kind of an arrival point on that place where you take a breath, because that's what they call cadence in theory.
So we should probably talk about what a cadence is.
Sure.
It's punctuation.
Yeah, so some people know what cadences are and some people don't. It's phrasing, which is...
It's punctuation. Cadence is punctuation. Think like music is structured very much like grammar is. You have phrases, you have different structures in your phrases, and you have different punctuations that are actually similar to, say, a semicolon or a period at the end, or a question mark. So that means that some cadences will sound like you have something else to say after that. You're not finished what you're wanting to say. Whereas other cadences are very final. That's the end of a sentence, and then you're gonna start a new sentence or expand on what you just said, something like that. But so and you can find that even in text when you're reading it, like I was just saying, where you feel like you have to take a breath, is a good place to sort of end whatever melodic idea you were wanting to come up with for it.
Interesting.
And a lot of times the words themselves, see how you say them. And even like if you come up with a melody, try and say those words along with those notes that you came up with, and see how that pans out. Because a lot of times it's not really awkward. Like your melodic line's just not going to work. Using. So for melodies, I find if you're using text, always start with setting your text to whatever it is that start there. Find most of your information there, like your basic structure there. But you don't always work. So
I have the world's lamest diagram. And this is basically when you learn music theory and you learn about how to build a melody, is done from something that's called antecedent and consequent. Antecedent means something that comes first. Consequent means it's the conclusion.
It's a consequence to something, right?
So when you write a melody, it's usually this is the question and this is the answer.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about human speech, when people have a conversation, they say, hey, how you doing today? And then someone answers, oh, I feel like this. And the voice itself lilts up and then it lilts down. So when you're writing traditional melodies, that's how they should be written. right? Where you have like the first half of the melody that ends, like you said, unanswered, like a question, and the second half ends like a period. Now, this is also a very 18th century way of writing music, and
it's a good place to start.
it's a good place to start,
but
but definitely not where you end. When you're going to
Yeah.
write real music, it's not where you end,
Yeah.
right? But it's a good idea to think of writing music
If
in
you
the
feel
way
really stuck, it
it
does
should
really help.
sound natural. It should sound like speech, because that's what a melody is. It should come naturally.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it should be in 4/4.
No, absolutely not, because a lot of text is not in 4/4.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Right? But there's rhythm to it, or even just like a guitar melody. There's usually like a first half to the riff and then the second half to the riff. So if you go back and you listen to well, almost any type of riffs, there's almost always like two parts of a riff, right?
Yeah.
Right? And it's just the way they're written. Right now, the only thing I have going in my head is like Megadeth, Holy Wars. I totally look up to Dave Mustaine. I think he was one of the most brilliant songwriters.
Earlier
Dave Mustaine.
Earlier Dave Mustaine.
80,
really high on heroin.
86 to 90. Golden Dave Mustaine. But he was absolutely brilliant. And actually, I've gone back and I've analyzed it, and it is right up there with all the amazing classical composers. He's so good at it, and he just channels this stuff, I think, through drugs.
I don't know how he did it, but he was like, his song structure was just absolutely brilliant. Like, he's some of the first stuff that I learned on the electric guitar.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get over how good it was. I'm like, why aren't people like more obsessed with this guy? Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Anyways,
it's like if you take the song Holy Wars, which most people know, there's this very simple riff where he's just moving around tonic E, like the note E, 7th fret on the A string, and he's doing like a drone low E string. He's going dun 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 dun. First time he does 5 to 6 power chord. Dun 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 dun. Next time he moves it up. The next, but like the basic melody is the same, but he keeps changing the chords every time as like the tail of the riff. And the last time there's a tail to the riff is definitely like a conclusion to what he's saying. So he has like a first half where it sounds like a question, and the second half where he definitely like ends it off, and he ends on the low tonic E, and it sounds like it's done. Then he starts again. And so he, like I said, he never took any theory lessons or anything.
No.
He just intuitively can hear this in his head, which most people can. But he's just aware of the form, the question and the answer to his melodies.
Interesting.
Which is like what I would say is like the best way to kind of approach.
If you're really stuck, it's a really good place to start. It doesn't have to rule your melody writing at all, but it's a very good place.
Should sound like a conversation, though.
Yeah.
See, that's really interesting, because I see that with a lot of amateur songwriters, especially like guitarists, they tend to just stuff every idea into a riff, and what ends up happening is it usually feels very like jarring to listen to, because there's no beginning and end. It's just kind of like they're tagging.
It makes no sense together.
Yeah, they're just tagging stuff onto like one core idea.
That was me when I was like 16 years old, and you get excited about writing music and you can't help it, and you want to add everything that you're inspired by, but it ends up making for music that's too hard to digest. And there's a way around this, though. It's called the technical term for it is multiply directed linearity. I was trying to find the article earlier.
Does that even make sense?
Right. So
that's Kramer.
So actually, the best example I can think of it is ion dissonance. I don't know if you're a fan of ion dissonance.
Love them.
Not the surge.
It was OASD.
No. So it's a different song I'm thinking of. The one that you based one of your pieces on.
It is the surge.
The surge. Okay. So it's like it begins with like this really cool tremolo riff. Digga 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 digga, and it's like does this, and all of a sudden the drums come in and it's like this straight chord, digga digga dun digga dum, and you think, oh, those are kind of two opposite riffs, and then you listen later on in the song, and the two riffs are combined. They like one becomes the question, the other becomes the answer, and so he combines the two riffs, and then later on in the song he reverses the riffs. So he keeps coming up with new material from just the two riffs, and he keeps chopping it up and reordering in different ways. So and because of that, it's a super complex song, but you never felt like you've gone too far from home when you're listening to it.
Exactly. That's a big thing to remember whenever you're writing any kind of music. Whatever you come up with, if it's one motif, one melody, one riff, or two, stop there and try and use those. And again, all the tools we listed earlier, we were talking about, to help you structure your materials, use those to expand on it. Because if you keep those two riffs all the way through a song, it gives it cohesion, it makes sense, and you actually hear it's a piece in itself. You're not trying, like you were saying earlier, to like shove all these different ideas into one. And then you're like, okay, there's nothing that's catching your ear at all. You don't really know what tonality you're in anymore.
Yeah.
Because the listener doesn't know how to get home anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Variation, what they call that also variation. So you take your riff, whatever, and you expand on it. Like you can make the rhythms longer, you can transpose it, all those tools. Creates cohesion, which is huge. Like that's so important in music. It doesn't have to be a catchy 4/4 riff.
Yeah.
But it's got to be something that makes sense together.
Well, it should be catchy.
And that's well it can
should be, but
what do you mean?
I know. It doesn't have to be like a grand metal 4/4.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be something that you can just hum off the top of your head always. Although that's also a good sign that you've written something good. If it stays stuck in your head and you're humming it, even if it's not like, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or whatever, that's a good sign that you've written something good.
Mm-hmm.
If it stays stuck in your head and you're stick to your ideas, don't cram too much into one. Really, the least amount is better.
Beethoven's
really is.
Symphony 5, which is an hour long, is based off of 2 notes.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. It's
and it's one of the most famous pieces of all time that's lasted hundreds of years. So
yeah.
And it's heavy as hell.
What's his name? Matt Bellamy from Muse. I don't know if you listen to Muse at all, but he actually was quoted saying he only writes songs off of the riffs that he remembers the next day. He anytime they jam, he'll if he can remember how to play that riff or what it was, then he knows it's a good riff. Otherwise, he just doesn't even bother, doesn't entertain the other stuff,
Oh, exactly. Yeah. If you sit down on your guitar for an hour and just start hacking out riffs, sure, you'll come up with 15 or 20 of them, but probably one of them is good. One of the best things that one of my first composition teachers taught me is that when you're writing a piece of music, it's often good to just chop off the first minute because it probably sucks. You probably weren't into it until after the first minute of writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that really helps explain a lot of things. And actually, I made a post yesterday referencing a video on analyzing Tool. I don't know if you guys listen to Tool at all, but they do that a lot where, they'll take just 1 or 2 ideas and just extend it for those 10 minutes or whatever it is, right? And it never feels like it's all over the place. It all feels like it's back to home. They're just creating all these variations and layering, a lot of importance on layering within that band. So.
Something that they do that's really cool is they create systems for their how they fragment and how they layer.
Yeah.
And if you want to create texture like Tool does, I find the secret is to create a system that you're going to do, and you fulfill it. You let it write itself out.
Yeah.
And that's how you get texture in music.
Let
the system run itself, even if there's some clashy, weird notes and stuff like that.
Just let it happen.
Let it happen. Go beyond it. Get used to that dissonance. If you let a system run itself out, that's when you get stuff like Tool and Meshuggah and some ion dissonance stuff that's more technical. That you get that texture sound more than just a normal song, but just I don't know. It's it's a texture.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, having done both, try to write intuitively versus a system. For me, anyways, the systems work also because it helps me stay focused, as opposed to trying to, like you were saying earlier, cram too many different ideas into one and get way too spread out and stuff. So
awesome. Yeah. So I just wanted to. I don't want to obviously take too long with this, so I want to address a lot of these questions that we got, and a lot of them I noticed were very rhythmic based and very practical questions. So I'm going to start with the most basic ones and then kind of gradually get a little more complex here. So Elliot Phillips, hi Elliot, how's it going? He asked, or rather he wants to figure out how to get more creative with ideas outside of 4/4, 3/4, which music can help hone better understandings of these signatures.
Let me rewrite that here.
Yep.
Yeah, we wrote down, we
came up with
we
notes,
prepped for
obviously.
this. Okay,
Prepared,
so the
yeah.
first thing that we said was be careful. Forcing odd time signatures onto music will make it sound forced and contrived. So you got to be careful of that. But it is possible to do it. It's what I prefer to do when you're doing that is to think once again more in like terms of groupings and things like that instead of just I'm gonna write a song in 7/4. The whole song will be in 7/4. Everyone's gonna count to 7 forever.
Yeah.
And it's like that's cool if it comes by naturally.
Yeah.
In which case,
Well, I think Elliot made a good point. Like, is there a way to I forget what was his question. He actually included that in his question.
I have it here. I think I wrote it down.
He said something that actually was absolutely true. When you're
I wrote it down. Oh, getting out of 4/4/3/4 music can help with understanding the patterns.
Yeah, no, that. Well, anyways, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm getting lost here.
But basically, for me to get out of that into like,
sorry.
Personally, what I do is my music is very asymmetrical on purpose because I like my music to be angular and like kind of gnarly and angry sounding.
Yep.
And so what I do is I work with beat groupings instead of time signatures. So in other words, if I have a melody that's like 5/8 notes followed by 4/8 notes and whatever, if it ends up being a 4/4, awesome. I'll put a 4/4 time signature. But if not, I will change the time signatures every single time to fit the phrasing patterns. Other people will have asymmetrical phrasing patterns and just keep it in 4/4 so that the drummer doesn't throw drumsticks at you.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing wrong with staying in 4/4, but then using your other instrumentation to imply other polyrhythms and that sort of thing.
But it will sound different no matter what you're doing. If you're changing time signatures every measure, and there's nothing wrong with that, I'm not going to put it down because I do it myself.
Yeah.
It's going to have like a very strange, disjointed sound to it. It'll sound not really random, but it will sound disjointed. Whereas if you write like odd beat groups and phrases, stuff like that, and just throw 4/4 and have the drummer keep that snare drum on the 3, you're going to hear the other instruments going off themselves, but there'll be a grounding to it.
Yeah.
You know, and you can also do that with like have the drummer keep like a 5/4 the whole time and then have the other instruments kind of go all over the place and phasing. But it depends on the texture, like the sound that you want, right? The overall atmosphere that you're trying to get across. If you want to sound like Frank Zappa, crazy, like start, stop, then I would do the different time signatures all over the places. If you want to sound more like Meshuggah keeps like one time signature and they change their phase patterns over top. And
then, they drop an 8th note.
And then at the very end of the phrase,
of their pattern,
they'll create like a little tail, which is like a quarter of the riff so that it catches back up. With it, right? So there's a lot of different ways to get at it. And frankly, this is a lot of the ways that bands get like their signature sound is how they get across this. Dream Theater is more of a change time signatures type band.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said, I do that a lot too, and I think it's pretty cool.
And it definitely works for them too.
Because that's the way, like back when Portnoy was playing them, that's the way that Portnoy liked to sound, right?
Yeah.
Like very disjointed sounding drums that kind of follow the guitar and stuff like that. Whereas, like I said, with Meshuggah, the drums are a lot of times just like a straight 4/4 or a 3/4, and the guitars are all over the place, and in the end, they phase at the end.
Interesting. Elliot's a drummer, by the way. I think he's trying to learn bass.
Awesome. So very cool.
So yeah, Elliot, it's going to depend on how you like to play and how you want it to sound in the end.
Yeah.
But the best thing, like, is to find bands that have some similar ideas to what you do and take a look at how it's written, and not copy it, but learn from it. We wrote down a few things, a few bands, and we can post this afterwards. The names of these bands and stuff. So Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, is like one of the first jazz fusion albums out there. And the drums for a lot of the time, like there's like the first tune, it's like snare on one, like a ch, 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 ch. But you can hear the instruments are changing all over the place, and then he'll like throw in half a measure and then he'll change his beat and stuff like that. So that's one way, and it creates an unevenness to it that like it shifts the listener's perspective while they're listening to it. So it's a really cool effect to do to it. And other times, like the drums are kind of all over the place and changing constantly, like with say Chick Corea's Weather Report. Time signatures are all over the place. These guys like Super Fusion, Shredder, guitar player.
Wasn't the Weather Report an actual band?
Yes, they were.
Oh, that was his band.
That was his
I thought you were
band.
talking about a piece.
No, that was the band. So they're more of like that, switching time signatures all over the place. So there's a classical composer. He's everyone's heard his music, but no one knows it's him. It's Bela Bartok, and he's in The Shining. His music's in The Shining. His music is all over the place. But he's another guy who likes to switch time signatures all over the place. Very technical music. A lot of his music sounds very metal. It's very angry, very dark music. He'd be a guy to listen to. And the particular piece for that is called Music for Strings, Percussion, and Celeste.
Okay. I'm writing these down in the comments.
Cool. Awesome.
Another one is, how do you say his first name?
Who?
Ligeti.
I don't even know that.
George Ligeti. I don't know. I can't say this guy's name.
Essentially, it's George.
Yeah, it's George Ligeti.
It's pronounced like it's the Hungarian version of
it. What's his name? The film director Kubrick.
Oh, Kubrick.
Kubrick stole his music because he thought that Ligeti was dead, so he just took his music and threw it onto Space Odyssey.
Yeah. Interesting.
He was still alive, and Kubrick got his pantsuit off of him. Anyways, he does this piece as one of his earlier pieces called String Quartet No. 1, and it's filled with these like quick time changes and stuff like that people just love. Very angular, aggressive, like death metal on strings.
Right.
Very cool piece of music.
Cool.
Well, another thing I was thinking about to sort of break away from 3-4-4-4. I remember when we were at Mohawk, there were some, I'm going back to jazz again, but there were some ensembles. The students were obviously being conducted by like a teacher and stuff, and they were working on pieces. And they actually took a jazz piece that was in 4/4, and they made what they call a jazz fusion version of it, where they changed the time signature. They took all these different riffs that were in the song, and they they put them in like say 7/4, and so the riff was extended itself, if you will. And then they would do 5/4 and all these other time signatures where they felt it was suitable to do so for riffs that were actually in 4/4, and it sounded really awesome.
Yeah.
So that's something, if somebody has an idea for a riff that's in 3/4/4/4, see how it would sound. Like there are some notes like they could be expanded and that sort of thing. It's all where the accents land, a lot of it, I find too.
Yeah.
Which means what time signature you're working in.
Yeah, what time signature you're working in. I don't know. That was
But most important thing when it comes to writing like stuff outside of 3/4/4/4, just make sure it's singable.
Yeah.
If you can't sing it, people probably can't listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to groove to something that's all over the place when you're in a live setting, right? So that's always the most important, is the feeling. The next question, which is a little more complicated, I'm skipping one question, we'll get back to it, comes from my good buddy Lucas, and I cannot pronounce his last name properly, but I'll try. It's Lucas Wojcicki, I believe. Can't remember. Told me once. Anyway, are there certain polymeters that sound more agreeable than others, or does it all depend on the execution? Basically, are there any go-to combinations you can expect that will work together? I think Tool uses 4/4 over 5/8 quite a bit, or another example would be Meshuggah and 7/8 over 4/4.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that was the question I was thinking about earlier. It is, a lot of it is based on how well a polyrhythm is executed, really. I don't think it's necessarily one sounds better than the other. It's got to be, again, it's got to be tastefully done, I feel. And people are got to be able to get a groove out of it somehow.
Yeah.
It's hard to give any definitive answers with any of this stuff, but it's true. A lot of it is all based on how comfortable you are playing the polyrhythm. And I lost my train of thought now.
It would also kind of depend on how many measures you're planning on to repeat something too, no? Because like if you're doing 7/8 over 4/4, it would eventually arrive back to the
28 beats.
Yeah, exactly. But
exactly, it's actually that simple. The usual ones are going to be like 2 against 3, 3 against 2, 4 against 3, 3 against 4. But it's basically like it's phasing, right? Which means that something is. So I have another lame little diagram for you guys. There we go. So we have here 3 over 5 or 3 against 5. So what you could do for this, for example, is you have a 3-note melody and a 5-note melody. The 3-note melody would have to be played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The 5-note melody would be played 1, 2, 3. You can have a lot of fun with this, right? Where you could say that the 3/8 is just a truncated version of the 5/8, where you're just taking certain of these notes, or just this one you have one beat and then the last beat, and this is all space in the middle type thing. But there's a lot of different ways that you can play with it. But basically, you have to find the common denominator between the two different numbers for it to phase properly. This can be a long-term plan. There's minimalist composers out there, they call them. It's a terrible name for them because it's not really minimalism. It's, what do they call that? It's like construction music type thing, where the entire piece is based on a gigantic phase. The big composer for this, his name is Steve Reich, Reich, like Reich, like the Third Reich. No, I didn't say that. Okay, anyways, but this guy was basically the first one to make it super famous, and he would have these 20-minute pieces of music with 2 melodies that phase over top of each other, and it takes the entire piece of music, you have to plan it out very carefully, for them to come back to one. And the big thing about that is when you have all this stress of these 2 different phases not quite lining up, and when they finally do, it's like, oh, thank God. It's like this huge buildup that you get when you're able to do these things. Tool obviously does it all the time. Sugar does it all the time. All these bands do it. Ion Dissonance does it all the time without people even noticing it, which is what I like. When bands can do it so well that no one notices it, I think that's genius.
That's fun.
That's super smooth when no one notices what you're doing.
Yeah.
But there's lots of incremental things you can do. You can do it like, say, you can have the drums and bass in a pattern of 5/4, and then the guitar is doing like shorter patterns of 3/4. Or you can do the opposite, and it creates different feels, and they're pushing against each other and stuff like that. But basically what it is you want to come up with 2 different patterns with 2 different numbers, make sure that they're going to add up to each other, and just draw it out. You know, you don't have to know theory, you just have to go, it's going to be this many pulses, bum, 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 and write it out that many times, write out the other one over top, see where they line up. It doesn't take any real theory, it just takes graph paper like Luc Lemay does.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, hopefully that helps with his writing.
Yeah, and of course, if anyone has more questions, just message us. That's fine.
Yeah, of course. There was a question.
I think people get scared of phasing, but it's not that complicated.
No.
Yeah, it's literally counting, like you said. It's it's one of those things where you just have to
it's
sit
like 5
down.
times 3 is 15. There's going to be 15 beats before this phases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a question about vocal patterns from Damien, and now he kind of made it specific because he's talking about his own music and deathcore. But I just wanted to sort of generally talk about like how can you make your vocal patterns more interesting on top of music, and like I guess it really depends on the relation of the music. But do you have any techniques that you can share to help with that?
Well, once again, like we were saying before, it's all based on the text. Like the vocal lines should come with the text. Another thing that I find really helps me when I'm setting death metal vocals, because I have no clean singing in my music at all. And if I do, it's like super dissonant anyways, is I sing-song the death metal vocals. Right? Like I add melody when there isn't melody when I'm setting them up, and I make sure it's a good clean line and there's lots of rises and falls. When you learn counterpoint, you learn that in your line, you need a high point and then you need to come back down.
Yeah.
The high point is usually 2/3 the way of it through a melody. It's the golden mean, 2/3.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of that. Like in artworks, there's always like the 2/3 pinnacle, and there's always a focus point at 2/3 the way through like a piece of art or a piece of music.
It's always the ratio,
Right. That's the golden ratio that people use, the Fibonacci series type thing. And if you can do that with a melody, it's always going to sound catchy. So you want like a low point and a high point. Even if it's death metal vocals, you can still do that. Right? And other than that, what I like to do is the same thing as me writing guitar riffs, is I come up with the most important part of the vocal line first, like intuitively. And then I go back, I analyze it, I see what parts I like, I make it perfect, and then I chop it up into fragments. Because anything you do, if it's longer than a measure long, it's going to have fragments to
Yeah.
it. And then you can find ways to repeat those fragments. Like, what's the catchiest part of your melody? Repeat it over and over and over. Find different places, make it higher, make it lower, make it like offset from each other type thing. So you can find things, you just keep moving it around.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'm gonna tag Damien just so he hopefully sees this. um, awesome. Yeah, that definitely would help a lot of people because there have been a lot of questions just talking about vocals, how to connect lyrics, how to write more interesting patterns, melodies, all that stuff. It all, like, at the end of the day, like, you guys have been pretty much been, to summarize what you've been saying is, you know, the vocals are another instrument and you need to think of it the same as all the other instruments. Obviously with lyrics,
Exactly.
lyrics and words can definitely help, you know, like you can really use interesting words strategically to help create more interest within that line. But, you know, it's music is music, right? So whether it's a guitar or
So
whether it's a
there's
vocal.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
a famous composer theoretician, early 20th century, Arnold Schoenberg, and he came up with this thing that was originally attached to lyrics. And what he'd do is he would attach specific words to specific timbres that happened in the instruments. So what he would do is every time that there was a word that he wanted to highlight, he had the same type of chord.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd always be, so everyone would hear that same word with that same chord every time, and it creates memory and tonal memory of that word and how it relates to the entire song. So that's another way to do it, is you create memory in the listener.
If that's what you're working with, for sure.
But an important thing that I was told by a supervisor that I had, who at the time I wasn't a huge fan of, but in retrospect, he was like the most brilliant teacher I ever had, was that for your music, you always have to be aware that there is a listener. Don't write music like it's for you, because it's not. That's not what music is. Music is communication. It's part of community.
Yeah.
Always be aware of your listener, whether that means, and listeners, they like to know what to expect, what's coming up a little bit. If they can never guess what's going to come up next, they're out. They're not listening anymore. They stop listening. But if they can always guess what's going to happen next and they're never wrong, they're also not going to bother listening anymore. Why would they? They figured the whole thing out by themselves.
Yeah, you tune it out after a while.
Right.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
So it needs to be somewhere in the middle. You have to drag them along and you have to give them expectation of what they want. But at the same time, you have to negate that expectation, which was one of the questions, subversion.
Yeah.
And I think that works for all this stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to trick them. And that's when they go, whoa, what was that? That was so cool.
Yeah.
But don't do it more than once in a piece or they get bored of it.
Yeah, yeah, and like use that as a signature for your sounds, like within that song. You know, like if you're gonna subvert expectations, like let the listener get engulfed in it, kind of with something they're familiar with, and then hit them with the whatever it is that you do.
The sudden change or like a sudden break in the sound or something. And then they'll remember that moment and make sure that you're building up towards something that they really, really want.
Yeah.
And then take it away from them. And then seconds later, give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you keep them reeled in for the whole song too, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep. You gotta have.
I was just gonna say, Matt seems to be asking a lot of questions, so I'm gonna let's just
call the 3 3 3 3. So that's 12, 14, 16 rhythm. Oh, that's a South American. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2. No, clave is 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3.
Well, that's an extended clave.
Which is actually, it's funny. South American music found its way into metal really, really early, where we have the clave. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, and that's an extended clave. What he wrote out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Latin rhythm.
So they just
yeah, man, listen to Latin music. It's the best. Those percussionists are the best musicians on earth.
Oh man, they're unbelievable.
So good.
If you can, you know.
Yeah, if you want rhythm.
You can tolerate that music. I love it, but I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. But man,
Cuban music, South American music. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my when I was in school for this, one of my teachers, he taught us a grant writing program and that sort of thing, but he was actually a flamenco player, one of the top flamenco players in Canada, and he would always talk about Latin rhythms and that sort of thing. So definitely learn
Yeah,
from those
that
guys.
stuff is the best.
Yeah.
It's so complicated and they're so smooth at it. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, bossa nova music is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw
You,
Matt's comment. Sorry.
I think it was you who put up an article about pop music and
Hmm.
integrating it. Was it you who put up that one?
Yep.
Yeah, man. The
Yeah,
more different music that you can listen to and integrate into metal, the better the metal sounds.
actually it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Matt did have one other question from the previous comments,
Yeah.
which was, he said, discussion of what a rhythmic cell is and how to identify
Oh,
and use them, how it differs from a motif.
Oh, I meant to find that score. Darn it. Okay. So a rhythmic cell is almost like a motif, but like the real definition of a rhythmic cell, if you're to like look it up online or like go to school for it, is it's like a small rhythmic figure that's repeated or over and over and over until you're told to do something else.
like plain and simply, say you've got like quarter note, eighth note, eighth note. That could be a type of rhythmic cell.
Yeah,
It's
and it's
very
repeated over and over
straightforward,
and
but it's
over.
repeated over and over. You
And
can
then
make
they'll
them.
say like repeat it this many times and then you get like an extension on that. That's
Yeah,
all it is, but it becomes like a type of motif because it's repeated so often that you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're almost the same, but like a
yeah, it's
motif
fine
is
line.
usually pitch and rhythm and harmony all put together, whereas a rhythmic cell is just a repeated rhythmic fragment.
Yeah, and it can be applied to like any group of notes that fit within it. It's that's it essentially. And there's also
Yes, that's usually the rules, Matt, that they must start on the same part of the beat over and over and over. But if you're a composer, you can change it. Oh, I wish I had
for instance, 16th
my,
note, so the feel changes. Yeah, absolutely you can.
yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
absolutely. And that would be
And that
cool.
again, that'd be another way of subverting the listener's expectation for sure.
Yeah, you can definitely like create a story through the change of the rhythmic motif or the rhythmic cell and just keep changing it
Yeah.
over and over very slightly, like take away 16th every time or add something every time.
Well, there's like more contemporary avant-garde music. There was a type of notation that some composers came up with that was called cell notation, and they were very short rhythmic and melodic cells that were repeated by the performers, and each performer would have a different one. I don't know if this sort of like to help sort of put this in context. And it was also a lot of the piece then seemed improvised to a point because it was all literally on like cues, like a conductor or someone would point at the person who had their first cell to play, and they just repeat it.
Yeah.
Like they all have are playing more or less at the same tempo, but they just repeat it, and then after a certain amount of time elapses, and they point at the next person, and they but literally, if you look at the scores, it's literally these little boxes that are written like you've got like a virtually blank page, a fragment of a staff. There's your first cell, and there's an arrow that's just drawn all the way across the page to tell you keep going, and then shift it over up next part, next instrument, next cell.
It works really well with metal. I've done
and
it.
And then keeps going. And then again, something an arrow. So that's literally like cell notation is a thing also. And so rhythmic cells, they're not so like the scores aren't so like graphic and unusual looking, but it's essentially the same idea. It's just a very short, rhythmic melodic fragment that's played and repeated over and over again and used to build a piece on sometimes too. It can be that as well.
Yeah. Nice.
I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, I'm sure if he has any more questions, he could probably just message you guys individually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Matt's one of the moderators too, so he'll be around for sure.
Nice.
Great. I think that covered all the questions. I didn't see anything else.
Okay, sorry, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was awesome. I really enjoyed that. That was fun for us.
Yeah.
Anyone, if you ever want to do this again, we're down for it. If anyone has specific questions,
obviously feel free to
message us.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I would love to do this again. And obviously, hopefully we can get more members in the group this way. So I'm sure when those theory questions pop up, I'll be sure to take note of them, and then we could probably have another discussion on video.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Pick a topic, anything. We can see what we can, do for sure.
Dig
Love
up our
it.
old textbooks and see what we can say.
Bring it back to school, right?
Exactly.
All right. So thank you so much, Ruth, Dan. I appreciate
Thank
everything.
you. Thank you so much for the
You know,
opportunity. This is
if anybody, I don't think there's really many people watching right now, but if there's anybody who has
That's okay.
questions in the future, be sure to ask. And tomorrow I have some big news, so stay tuned.
We
Cool.
will.
All right,
Sure.
we will.
Thank
All
you
right,
much,
guys.
Lou.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
a lot, man.
Take care.
We'll see you.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.